Round 21 saw a change at the top. Adelaide take up the running. Collingwood slipped to second. Brisbane flex. Geelong and Gold Coast pad their percentage. Fremantle escape the slippery slope, which will probably claim someone at some stage. Hawthorn didn't lose admirers, but they lost a key piece. The Giants surely aren't going to be mounting a challenge after a performance like that. And the Dogs are stretching the imagination. They're still ninth. But in the pecking order, they might feel a little bit higher than that. Into the Monday means test we go. Nathan Buckley, welcome.
Morning, Gerard. How are you?
I'm good. There's a bit to work with here. Collingwood were always going to be the biggest story. We'll get there shortly. Give me a buck stops for Victoria Police, made for more search police careers.
Well, the buck stops is where's the twist in the tail going to come from? Invariably, you have teams, and we're looking at 9 teams now that are in contention for finals, and all of them are trying to work out how can we get there? And as you detailed about Collingwood in your lead-in, when they lost 3 or 4 through that August period or a little bit earlier, when they didn't lose top spot, they sort of had that buffer. But the final starts for them now. So the tweaks that you're going to see from a, say, a Collingwood, they need to happen now. The tweaks that we needed to see from a Hawthorn, we saw a little bit on the weekend. They upped their pressure. They tried to change their forward mix a little bit because they realised that they needed to find something extra other than what they were doing to be able to get what they wanted. Adelaide don't need to. Dogs, I reckon they're pot committed. We know what that looks like, so they're not going to shift too much, although I always wonder with Bevo whether he's leaving something up his sleeve. We're not going to see it from Geelong because I think what we'll see from Geelong and the biggest talking point around them at the moment is Jeremy Cameron and his 100, and can that have them go off radar a little bit? And I think it can, but I think they'll manage it well. Giants, girl with the curl, they're good is great, but they have refused, in my mind, from what I've seen, and I'm sure that the coaches would be shifting little things here and there, but they look like they're trying to play the same way as they did in the first month. And when they hit it, it looks great. And when they don't, it looks terrible. So there needs, and Brisbane have shown their hand as well. They've changed and shifted. They're going forward hard and they've ramped up their pressure. And their best football is arguably even more compelling than it was through the season last year, because we know the best performance that they put on the park after coming back from behind a couple of times was in the grand final. So there's a real question on, where's the twist in the tail going to come from? I think Adelaide's best is the best at the moment, and they've proven that over the second half of the year. So they're the Hawthorn of last year, but they're not simply coming hard. They're at the top. They've earned their opportunity at the top. But everyone else is trying to work out, all right, what do we add to our mix to find better, and how much change have they got something in the back pocket, and how much change is going to be positive for us without damaging what we've already got, what's already got us to where we are.
So how much of that choice is a stimulus and how much of it is a necessity when you recognise a shortcoming and are searching for something else, or you want to add something to the mix as late as you possibly can for shock effect and for maximum impact?
Well, it depends on how you've positioned yourself through the year, and that's one. So win-loss and position on ladder, or what you've got to lose actually counts, but then the big one is your appetite for risk, like the coach's appetite for risk. So I would suggest that Chris Fagan in the last couple of years has understood, through demonstration as much as anything. Round 8 last year, they get flogged by the Giants. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to up our attacking directly to goal. We want to open up the field. We want to run and carry a little bit more. We're going to dance on ice. So that was circumstantial, which shifted Fags off a conservative philosophy into a more aggressive philosophy. So that's something that was circumstantial in some form. Whereas someone like Bevo, I think he breaks it before it's broken and then wants to put it back together. So there still could be something from the Dogs, I think, in the mix to see where they go. you wouldn't be doing anything if you're Adelaide. You'd just be going, like, this is how, like, they came in at quarter time, 5 goals down. We're not changing a thing. This is how we go about it. This is what we do. And we believe that our best is just better than the next best if we get A, B, and C right. Pressure on ball, intercept marks, and then when we go forward, you've got enough forward damage to hurt the opposition. So I think it does depend on circumstances. Geelong are always a sleeper for me with this one because I think Scotty always has something a little bit to add to the mix, a belief that he thinks is going to beat the competitors that he'll face in September. And I think his players believe that as well, which is why they're always dangerous in that time of year.
So where does the twist in the tail come from? The buck stops looking for a career that gives you more. Search police careers, Victoria Police made for more. There's a very simple text here that reads, Collingwood is always the biggest story, Gerard, and there's an absolute truth to that. You've lived it for many a year. The big issue for Oldham construction lawyers, you're experts in construction law. How deeply do you want to read into Collingwood's 11-week run at the top of the ladder coming to an end?
Well, you have to. Can we put on the agenda that the mass media, we put Collingwood too far out in front 6 weeks ago, and it was by demonstration. But and I suppose it's for the same reason we're questioning their bona fides now because of 3 losses in the last month. So we do get caught up in this short term stuff. I don't think they were as far out in front 6 to 8 weeks ago, and I don't think there's too much to panic about in terms of their last month. They played really poorly against Gold Coast and just failed to run them down. They played pretty well against Fremantle, but had a 6-goal key forward that they would normally not give up, and I thought that was a little bit of Darcy Moore, a little bit about the back six. And then that's happened again, but they were also well beaten through the midfield by the Lions. So I still like a lot of what Collingwood have. I think when you sort of look and go, Houston or their back mix, there's a lot of little things, and even the Collingwood people are bringing up free kicks, which is going to happen. But the guts of their game is still really solid. But this is, potentially, if we're looking for twists in the tail, is there, are you stayed and are you stagnant, or are you stubborn and have an absolute belief in the way you're going about it, or do you need to add something to the mix, or is there something that's in the back pocket that's not being played at the moment that is waiting for the right time? Well, maybe Friday night or Thursday night is the right time to be able to pull that out. But I'm not losing too much sleep, but as you said earlier, the time is now.
So the defensive structures and setup. So they're interesting. My thesis at the start of the year on them was twofold. One, that they are old, but they don't look old. They don't play old, and they aren't reliant on those older players, except suddenly Jeremy Howell looms so large of what's been missing. Now, those who are watching the VFL are saying Frampton's not in very good form.
Doesn't matter.
He's a structural piece.
Yep.
If they suddenly are reliant on Jeremy Howell, that would make me a little bit uneasy.
No, they are, and they have been for a long time. Jeremy Howell is the glue for the back half, the same way that, and his connection with Scott Pendlebury, who is the glue for the midfield, whose connection to Jamie Elliott, who is the glue for the forward line. They're your pieces from a leadership aspect. Now, that's understood and demonstrated internally. So you don't always know who are the glue guys, who are the ones that pull it all together. Darcy Moore's the captain, but he's not the glue of the back six. In fact, without Jeremy Howe, I think Darcy Moore is probably 75% of the player that he has become. So you do need those guys that pull the coattails, that give you a razz, that give you that pat on the back, and then make the plays when they need to be made. And Jeremy Howe is that guy for Collingwood in the back half. The midfield play's been really consistent, and the stoppage stuff doesn't look much different. Field position has been as strong in the last month as it was throughout the whole season. It's the pointy ends, and in those pointy ends, like giving up too many scoring opportunities in D50, or much more than they were before that. And that is, I think that comes down to the mix of your back six and not quite being able to connect as much in the forward 50. So you fix 2 entries that way with 2 scoring opportunities and then finish off with 2 more your way. That's a significant difference. And Collingwood aren't 3 losses from the last 4. They're only 1 loss from the last 4. And we look at it entirely differently. So that's how marginal I think it is, and that's where I would place their prospects at the moment.
And the belting they got around the ball, which the coach was at pains to point out, that is abnormal for them. So you are inclined to treat that as abnormal?
Well, I think we'll have a look at what the Lions have and what they imposed. Now they also came off being smacked. They were smacked in a contest that can you say it? Yeah, you can say it. Like, in retrospect, they walked into that soft. They didn't walk into that hardened. They didn't walk into that with an edge. They must have in some shape or form walked into that thinking that it was done before it was done. But Gold Coast lifted. Gold Coast were above what they expected they would be, and they were scuttled because of it. There's no other way to explain it. That where Neil, McCluggage, Dunkley, Ashcroft, keep going. Rayner is a strong body in and around that ball. Berry is a strong body in and around the ball. There's no other way to explain what happened against the Suns. It's not taking anything away from the Suns, but the Lions didn't present the way that we expect them to. So they're coming off a smacking. They've been stung in some shape or form, a personal stinging, but they have had this pressure focus over the last sort of couple of months, and they've risen from it. So not every club has the ability to put that sort of heat and pressure on another contender, but Brisbane do. And not every club has an intercept player like a Harris Andrews who can stop that long down the line, consistent play that Collingwood go to when they're trying to keep the game just in control and maybe get some field position and speed up and score off it. Well, Harris Andrews was brilliant. So Brisbane had the nuts in those terms, and they played them well. And Collingwood were well beaten in areas that they normally either have or a little ahead on.
The big issue, Oldham Construction Lawyers, your experts in construction law, keeping your home and business in premiership form. Just the calming hand of Nathan Buckley on the Collingwood side of things. I think a little bit of it was there when Lachie Neale told us straight after the game. He said it's hard to review a game when you didn't bring any effort. And then Fags had sort of given him, that's not us. With the rider, it better not be. And it was just the right sting, which I felt Nathan Buckley gave you that insight. He has a touch with this group after all these years. He knows.
Yeah, he
does.
Just
knows where to push and pull.
But he comes from belief, trust, and optimism, absolutely. But there is an element of accountability. He plays disappointed dad really well, and that's exactly what. And if that didn't work, well, then I don't think Fags would do that anymore. He'd find a different way. But right back, way back really to, when they weren't able to win through finals, when they went straight sets out, and then you get that game against. We've referenced it. I've referenced it quite a bit. The round 8 game last year against the Giants where they got smacked, and his response was, "Oh look, I don't know exactly what happened. I'll have to talk to the leaders. We'll work it out." And at that stage, his tenure as coach was up for discussion, but he wasn't concerned about himself as such. He was just trying to work out how do I get the best out of the group. I think he does get the mix right. But as we just heard then, what he just detailed was their motivation to perform on that evening against that opponent in this circumstance. After the loss that they had the week before, there was so many factors that fed into Brisbane's need to go and perform on that night. And what we've witnessed over the last 10 weeks is when a team needs to win the game, regardless of where they've been on the ladder, when a team needs to win the game, invariably that's the way it's gone. I reckon I would say 90% of the results have gone to the teams that needed the win more than the other team. So Collingwood now become if we go back to that, and that's the last I'll say of it, they now become the team that needs to win. So we will see a different Collingwood. Whether that's good enough or not, we'll find out. But Brisbane were first class, and the way they went about it was excellent from the get-go. And they buffered a little bit of a comeback in the second, but then came out after half-time and just, imposed themselves again. And I saw a text, probably corrected. I said that Adelaide's best is the best. Maybe Brisbane's best is the best. So I probably was not respectful enough of what they've been able to put together. If you put Adelaide and Brisbane on a neutral ground at the moment, I would probably give Brisbane the edge at their best. But what Adelaide's doing is pretty compelling. But, Brisbane showed once again on the weekend that, when the whips are cracking, they'll be well and truly in it.
And Neil, McCluggage, Dunkley, Ashcroft, 36, 34, 31, 30. So the might that they have around the ball.
It was always going to be the way. They're not just experienced. They're not just talented. They're not just driven. They're all of the above. And the mix is great. And you got a bloke like Lachie Neale and you talk about the Lachie Neale effect on Ashcroft and the Lachie Neale effect, but then I reckon you'd have the Dunkley effect. He's the guts. He's the tough. He's the determined one. Like he finds he's got a willingness to compete, unlike many in the competition. He's not as athletically gifted. He hasn't got the hands that a Lachie Neale has. And then McCluggage might be the combination of all of them. So, they've got a compelling mix. They've got big, strong bodies, and they've been around for a while. And no one's talking about them defending. We haven't spoken about them defending for a while, have we? That's not been the narrative.
No.
They've been able to move past last year, and the challenges that they're facing are quite obvious. Whether it's been a dip from them or whether it's having to rise to an opposition. And they've done it for the best part really well. So, it's never a premiership defence. It's always chasing the next. But the way that our narrative works outside of it, they've buffered that really well. We haven't really gone there, and potentially it's because they've been consistently good. They've evolved. And they look like they're on the right track.
And the other note from the game, Logan Morris with his 6 goals, so it was beautifully recounted during the game. He was the youngest player to kick 6 on the MCG since Lance Franklin. So 20-year-old who's grown beautifully into his game. He does it quite differently to if our markers of young forwards are Thilthorpe and Darcy. He's a very different player to that, but he is crafty.
He's prototype. Like he and Kaushadea, Caddy potentially. I think that they're the modern key forwards. You don't need to be, 105 kilograms and Josh Tracy type. Like a Josh Tracy is nearly an old school key forward. He's 6'4", 6'5", big unit, wins the ball in the air, lumbering at the ground a little. Doesn't kick many goals off the ground, kicks most of them from marks. Like that's the quintessential old school sort of key forward. That's not what Logan Morris is. It's not what the modern game is asking for. You need to be able to break the space. You need to be able to, like James Hird was probably like in this era, James Hird would continue on, his way and he'd play the same because you've got aerial, but you can also play on the ground. You know where the drop of the ball is, and Morris does that exceptionally well, picks up the flight of the ball and knows exactly where it's going so he can use his body to position. He's smart. He's obviously fit, gets up and back, and he finishes well. He had a couple of quiet weeks, so he needed to respond in some shape or form. But, he's only played bloody a handful of games. He hasn't been around for too long, so I really I love the way that he goes about it.
They got that right at the Lions. 80% less energy and carbon usage, battery-free, always compliant, huge savings, smarter light environmental exit signs. The best bit in all sorts of ways was Friday night Adelaide Oval. You were there. The Crows got the win, which ultimately takes them top of the table. An awesome night, wasn't it?
It was, and it was, it was billed, as a real match of the Titans, and looking at the numbers leading into the game, the differentiation between Hawthorn's run last year from round 8 right up to the end of the year, and how number one offense, number one defense, scoring and defending turnover, that differential in the turnover game is instructive. The best team, the team that wins the flag, is always in the top 4 for turnover differential. I just thought Adelaide had a chance, and they're now, and being in the rooms after was awesome. Like, it was so good to be in a winning change room. I haven't been there for years. Like, it was awesome to be a part of and to feel that energy and the connection, and they're on a roll. They're on a roll. They've got momentum. You talk to Taylor Walker, and then we're talking to Isaac Rankin. One bloke who's been there, done that. Well, not been there. He's been in this space 8 years ago in the 2017 run, and a guy who hasn't played in a final yet. So they're doing so much right, and to be able to handle, and it just franked their form to be able to handle. They came out, like the opposition came out, smacked him in the nose, put some real damage in the scoreboard. They stabilised in the last 2 or 3 minutes, which is a great sign before needing to go in at quarter time, and then the coach had the calm and the belief in his players and their system to say, hey, take a breath. There's a few things that we can do a lot better that we know that are in our absolute control. So let's go do that. Let's focus on this, focus on that, focus on that, and then they just go out and get it done. So it was a great sign. I mean, I thought Hawthorn were gallant. They were really, I think they presented themselves really well and played really well. Right to the end. They kicked 2 points that should have been goals late. So the margin was, well, even though it was 14 points, it was probably more a one-kick game either way when you look at it. And, the Crows were strong enough to hold on.
And the individuals that you've mentioned there, so Jordan Dawson, just exceptional again. Taylor Walker, the 2 clutch shots late with such authority, and Isaac Rankin, who... There was true genius in his work in that last quarter when it's all on the line and the frenzy sets in. There was no frenzy about him.
No, it was phenomenal. I mean, Jordan Dawson had 21 touches. He was the Crows' highest possession getter. So it wasn't as if they were, racking them up. Like it wasn't that type. And this is what we know of finals. It's not so much about how many, it's about how effective. His second quarter was off the charts, Dawson, and he showed leadership. The stoppage goal from Rankin in the last quarter, I don't know, 2 or 3 blokes in the comp might be able to do that once a year. He seems to do it 5 or 6 times. He is a bit like Eddie Betts from those pockets when he kicks those goals that no one else can kick. They've got hurt factor everywhere, and they're holding up really well. And to be honest, I think I described them a couple of years ago as a bunch of no-names that I think have got the makings of a really good team, and they just need a little bit of luck, need a little bit of timing, thicken the soup a little bit with their off-season recruiting, get a bit of luck with injury, which they've got a lot better with their availability. It looks like it's all coming together for them. This momentum is going to be hard to stop, regardless of what their finals experience or inexperience is. The momentum is hard to stop. So, and until it is stopped, it's going to be stronger and stronger. So if you get home finals and win a qualifying final, you go into prelim, it's going to be hard to stop then. You win the prelim, you go into the grand final, it's going to be really hard to stop then. So it's the longer they go without a loss, the more the rolling stone continues, and they'll be harder and harder to beat.
The worst bit is clearly the Will Day injury, which I think just sapped everybody. Sam Mitchell had the reference in the post-game as most people would have looked at that and think we're a pretty good team. We're trying to be better than that. But their prospects do get reassessed because Day was the factor late in their season who might have made such a difference to them.
Yeah, if we went through our most important players to a team, we had Will Day up there, didn't we? We had Hayden Young in there. Well, I did. I think there's been an undercurrent of sort of criticism of Hawthorn, I think, about how they've handled it, like a young bloke that's with a recurring injury. Without knowledge of what's happened internally, I think Hawthorn, I don't think they could have handled it any better. they go like clearly he's had an injury. I don't know if he had surgery on it or not. Did he have surgery?
Yes.
So he had surgery on it. The other thing with James Hird, it nearly ended his career in the navicular stress and then potential fracture. So we're assuming that it's still stress at this point, but there must have been a hairline fracture to have gone in to operate. Then you give him all the time in the world, and you build up. You slowly build up the load on the foot and on the body, and then you try and get to a point where you return to play. He would not have got back to return to play state unless he'd been able to elevate those loads without damaging the foot any further. There's a certain point you get to where you go and play a game. You play a game that goes to a load and an intensity above anything that you can do in training, as much as you like to try to train as you play. And I reckon Hawks needed to do it, and they needed to do it this far out from finals to find out whether it is an ongoing concern. Will Day would not have forgiven himself or the club if they hadn't have taken those steps. And clearly he's ready to take those steps. So you've got to find out. Now they turn him, and the feedback that they got is obviously, no, this isn't sustainable. It's not going to. So whether he's re-injured or whether he's just flared up, and they've made a decision on future versus present. But you are here to contend. You are here to make finals. You are here to win flags. That's why you play the game. So you've got to go to the edge, and sometimes you go over the edge to find out whether you can do that or not. I think Hawthorn have done that. I think Will Day has done that. I can't see how it's been mismanaged in any way. It's just bad luck. And it's bad luck for the club. It's bad luck for the young fella. Now we sort of come back and we hope that there's no long-term ramifications from it. But he has time. He has time. But there's no guarantees in this life. There's no guarantees in this game. I hope that he's able to find a way through it and his foot strengthens up, and that we see a full career on the other side of this. But I don't think that Hawthorn or Will Day should be criticised in any shape or form, because this is what it's all about.
For the here and now and the decisions they have to make, would you play the four talls again on Thursday night, or would you shelve that after one look?
I think the four talls is a misnomer.
Yep.
I don't see Kalshadir is a Morris. Morris isn't. I mean, is Morris a tall? He's a tall. He's a medium. Like, he's a ground player. He contributes to all of that. They need the second ruck, and I think that's Chol. I think Lewis is a legitimate, long down the line player. He's a tall for you, but they don't go long down the line that often. Hawthorn, when they do, he would be in the mix. And Gunston's not a tall. So let's be clear. They're playing taller, but they're not playing with four key forwards. Probably they're playing with maybe 1.5 or 2 and a bit. And that's about what most sides have got, 3 that they would rotate through 2 key forward positions at different times. And if they're all playing 80%, if they're say 3 key forwards are playing 80%, 60% of the time you're one of them on the pine. So you're playing 2-4. And I think that Hawthorn are probably playing 2-4 more often than not. It becomes a form issue more than a structure issue, and that's up to Sam Mitchell to make that call.
All right, we'll find out on Thursday night. Thought you were going to take me to sort of 60% of the time. It works every time there.
I could have.
The pressure index for New Vision Clinics, keyhole laser vision, new generation technology. You could there was a stench about Thursday night from about 4 minutes in from the Giants, and that was Adam Kingsley in the aftermath. So they sit squarely in the pressure index, not for no other reason other there's Buck's been this idea that they're the team that could come storming over the top. Well, they shed percentage. They sit 8th, and they could still be the team that misses when the music stops.
Yeah, they're a fascinating case study for me. So they gave up another 58 inside 50s. They're bottom 2. Only West Coast gives up more inside 50s than the Giants. So that has been a sustained. So inside 50s aren't the be-all and end-all. If you defend them well and you don't allow goals, then it becomes a springboard for attack, and then we get the tsunami conversation. But it's still harder to score from your D50 than it is from your forward 50. you're 1 in 10 from your back 50, and you're 5 or 6 in 10 from turnovers in your forward 50. So that's that, and then it's so the closer you get to your goal. Get this, we'll record this, we'll play it later. Closer you get to your goal, the more chance you have of scoring. Don't
say you're not smarter at the end of today.
No, yeah. The text will be flooding with this with feedback. But the Giants continue to play off their heels. So they only scored 44 points, which is a feather in the Bulldogs' cap. And the Bulldogs were able to win going forward, played a front half game. But the Giants just weren't. They looked powerless to be able to prevent the ball winning, the ball movement, to get out of their field position from their negative field position. And it's not a 1 week thing. It's not a mulligan. Like, that is an outlier result in terms of scoreboard. But the young Fonte gave an interview for his Rising Star nomination last week, and he spoke about our theme going into the Sydney game and into the Western Bulldogs game was enough is enough, because we've been well beaten by Sydney in the past, and we've been well beaten by the Bulldogs in the past. So we made a stand. We put a line in the sand, and we are not getting pushed back any further. For 6 of those 8 quarters, they've been woeful. And this is after the really setting up this motivation around not going back any further, about pushing back, around finding better, about imposing ourselves on an opposition on a couple of opposition that have imposed themselves on us. They were insipid in the first half against Sydney, and they were insipid in the 4 quarters against the Dogs. The only thing that they had going for them was a blistering burst, which was after a blistering burst. So how often does Adam Kingsley need to remind them and to fuel that emotion with a visceral challenge around, what does this mean to you? It doesn't mean anything to you. When are you gonna lift? That's a slippery slope if the coach or if the players feel like that their average is down here, and they need to get a clip across the head to actually find their best. So there's real question marks about what they're doing.
Yep.
And that's regardless of the talent level. And I think their best is as good as any. But they confuse me.
You've had that the whole way through. Yep.
Well, and you know what? Who knows? They come with a run, but they could come with a run. But I actually can't see it now.
No.
I had them in my top 4 early, despite some of these performances. I can't see it.
No, I feel the same way now. I feel like we've seen enough now. So some things you can't unsee. So you can give them the mulligan and go your hardest. But some things you can't unsee. That's not the premiership team.
When you asked me to do the ladder 2 or 3 weeks back, I actually have the Bulldogs finishing 6th and the Giants finishing 7th. So the Bulldogs will play the Giants. Would that be played at the G, or would it be played at Marvel?
It'd be at the G.
Why?
Yes, well, we could disappear. We could lose the rest of the means test of that, Bucks. The last of the 6 teams that mattered from this round is the Western Bulldogs, and the debate is, could they surf attack to the promised land, Bucks? Do it in a way nobody expects. Our debate, let's get into it.
Well, I absolutely believe they could. It's less likely because you need to have a balanced game, but their defence has got to be field position, because if you've got a back 6 that are playing on their heels, sometimes it doesn't matter how good they are. But if you've got a vulnerable back 6 in your D50, why don't you play 60% of the game in your front half? Then your back 6 is playing across the midfield, and easy to defend across the midfield with a bit of support from a wingman who might drop back from stoppage, or a defensive mid who might be able to give you a bit of depth in a +1, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that the Dogs are going to be challenged by, and it's going to be their opportunity as well. I think that for my part, I love the way the Dogs go about it. I think they've got a stacked midfield. When Darcy and Norton get going the way they are, like they've broken new ground in the last month. Norton's been fantastic. Like he's really elevated. I mean, his contest has always been really consistent, but when he's feeling himself at the moment, he knows, like, oh, if I put myself in a position, I'm going to take 2 or 3, 4 contested marks. He's doubling up his efforts, so he's not. It's not just one lead now, and if he gets overlooked, he's coming back going for a second and a third because he knows that, like, the players are looking for me. I'm hitting the scoreboard, so he's fueled his own belief and that of his teammates as a spearhead, as a strike target, and he's putting himself in better positions to be able to hit the scoreboard more. Darcy's just going to keep doing it, and that just makes Sam Darcy even more damaging. But I'd say the Team D aspect, the back sixes rely on West, McNeil, Vandermeer. If those 3 guys can step up and have excellent pressure games in a final, then their back six are set up to be able to defend really well. If they can't put that pressure on an opposition rebound and it's end-to-end stuff, or even they go long down the line and then they speed up off that into their D50, then they're vulnerable. But their defence needs to be, it is ball winning and ball movement, but it's also pressure on the immediate time that the ball hasn't been won or that the ball has been turned over. They get that right. That is a form of defence, and they have that capability. So it won't be all out attack. It'll be all out attack with ball winning, and if it's not all out attack and ball winning, then it'll be immediate pressure. If they can do that, well then, yeah, they can beat anyone.
And there they are sitting ninth. The Bulldogs are our debate, the Gary Lyon thesis. Stop having people tell you what you can't do and just get on perfecting what you are good at. Jack Martin.
I love the journey there. I think it was Butler. I think it was Butts. He said, "No, your number one thing." he actually called Scotty out. Well, maybe not, but it's one that I don't like.
In 5 minutes and 16 seconds, Jack Martin kicked 4 goals as the sub. Can you be too good as the sub? Unanswerable question.
No. Would you rather be sub in a premiership team or 24th player?
Nice.
So it gives you options. It gives you options, doesn't it? As a coach, it gives you options as a player. He has played on the wing, at halfback, and as a forward now. They've always been shrewd list managers. Geelong. They find players that 25, 26-year-olds that, or even later, that have had injury concerns, and then they give them time. And they changed, obviously, their system and is more circumspect. They're not in a rush. And then they learn the system and then they come in. And Jack Martin has obvious talent. And we saw evidence of that on the weekend. So it's just another one with hurt factor that is at the coach's disposal.
Second unanswerable question out of that game is, could Jeremy Cameron's notion of kicking 100 goals, which I personally thought was a complete media construct until I watched yesterday's game, could it be counterproductive?
Yes. And namely to Jeremy Cameron, first and foremost. And if it affects Jeremy Cameron, then it affects Geelong, because he's, in my mind, their most important player. So it's not just about, like, he could get 100 and they could win every game between now and finals. But if they play the way they played the first quarter on the weekend, I'd be concerned. And I'd definitely be having a conversation about that.
Who would you have that conversation with to shut that down?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think it's because that could have been the handball from Dangerfield and the handball from Reece Stanley. They, in Jeremy Cameron's hands with 2 steps of space, he's probably going to convert those more often than a right footer is in that right forward pocket would anyway. So there's an argument to say that and I would, if I was Chris Scott, I'd say that, hey, these are great from conversion percentages. This is exactly what we're looking for. But Jez, if you spend all your time looking for this, well then we're worse off. We're not. The focus has gone away from where we want it to be. Let's make sure that we don't put the focus on, and kicking goals is a relatively large part of Jeremy Cameron's profile or of his remit, but there is so much more to his game other than that. And if you're I don't know whether he's had less than 8 touches in a game, but he was well beaten in general play on the weekend by Jones, who played really well. If he gets 8 touches every game between now and the end of their campaign, then Geelong are worse off. Did he get 8 touches just because he was well beaten, or is it because his energy and focus was away from the elements that have made him great over a long period of time? I can't answer that. But that's worth having a conversation about and dealing with now, not waiting till September to find out.
I didn't think this was a real thing at all, and I wouldn't let this be a real thing from here. I wouldn't let that.
Well, Chris Scott was asked
I felt
about
like it was a media construct because we're all looking for stuff to talk about, and then it manifested yesterday. I'd be shutting that down.
Well, I think that it will be shut down, but that doesn't mean it can't happen, and that doesn't mean the players can't want it, because and it doesn't mean that it can't be contributory to what Geelong are doing. You just don't want it overtaking what they're doing. And we are going to see those little handballs given. Like, I thought the one from Dangerfield was fair. Like, that's fair. The one from Stanley where the player's standing right there and he lays the block, that's relatively fair. But one of those misses or is defended well, and the opposition will be on it more and more as we go forward. Look, we're talking about it. So and we're not talking about, the way Geelong are going to win finals as such. So even with it front of mind, it can take away. But what Chris Scott and Geelong have been really good at is not taking themselves off at the knees, worrying about or talking or thinking too much about things that aren't going to take them forward. So they're probably the one thing they do is you just focus on what we need to do, not on the superfluous stuff.
Buckley's chance might be best framed as Buckley's choice this week. Grundy or Gawn as the All-Australian ruckman?
Well, I am a selector, so I'm going to open it up a bit further. Why just those two? I mean, they're Gawn and Grundy have been exceptional over a long period of time, and I do believe, whether I was a player, a coach, or the time as a selector, I do believe that reputation carries a little bit of weight. Like, so if you have previously been selected in a position and you play really well, it's really hard. You've got to be unseated by someone who plays, 10% better than you. Like, I think there's been a little bit of that along the way. So, do we see that as that's human? I think that's human nature. And when we put someone on a pedestal as you are the best in your position, it's like you need to go past that person to be able to get them. If it's even, you'll probably give it to the person who's been doing it for longer. How do you judge a ruckman? That's the question. That's a conversation that we'll have. And do you put a second ruckman in at the expense of what? At the expense of one of the 10 midfielders that we choose every year, or is it one of the high forwards or a running back? Like, in the end, we will have to have that conversation again, and we have that conversation every year. Is the performance of the second best ruckman in the competition an All-Australian year above other positions that have had All-Australian years, like the seventh forward or the seventh defender or the sixth or seventh midfielder? Because that's invariably what we'll have to get to. But there's so many different ways that coaches use their ruckman, and the game and the ruck game is evolving. Witts is pure ruck craft, then he's probably as good as any going around. Gawn, pure ruck craft, yes. I'd say that McInerney, ruck craft. But then you've got guys like English. He's not a ruckman person. You're not looking at his hit-outs or his hit-outs to advantage. You're looking at his mobility, his aerial, his ability to cover the ground. He's now a forward threat, and he's been used very differently by the Bulldogs. I think Marshall's been down that path a little bit. Cherry is a follow-up beast and a massive competitive in the air and on the ground. And he's a bull in the ruck contest. I think Grundy is the same, but Grundy's more of an accumulator, although Cherry's been able to do that. Where do you put Luke Jackson? Is he vying for the ruck role? Like, these are all the questions that we will end up asking ourselves, because Luke Jackson's been more a ruck rover than a ruckman in the last sort of 6 weeks. But it is I think there's actually a cohort of ruckmen that are in fantastic form and have put together great seasons.
At the end, you'll be voting between Grundy and Gawn, I reckon.
Oh, so I haven't even mentioned Darcy Cameron.
Yes.
Who is more of a ruck craft and then intercept. So, I mean, and I would put him in the top 3 or 4.
Buckley's chances, Buckley's choice this week.
So you can either take these as read or you can say that they're in alphabetical order.
Okay.
So I'm putting Adelaide at number 1, and they won't leave there until they lose.
Ooh.
So that could be next week or it could be never. I'm putting Brisbane at 2, given that that sort of showed their top end and on the G against a contender. Got Collingwood at 3, and I've got Geelong at 4.
So 4 was the team who blew my hair back.
Yep.
That was the Bulldogs, clearly.
Yes.
So they can sit 4th from that performance.
Having said that, it's not that hard to do. Blow your hair back.
A bit easier than
But
it used to be,
anyway,
too. 3 Collingwood, 2 Adelaide, 1 Brisbane. I reckon the default was re-established for me. Brisbane are the best team. So they can sit 1 until proven otherwise as well.
So who have we got? So Adelaide play Collingwood in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Okay.
And then Brisbane have still got 2 tricky ones on the way in.
Yeah, there's still a bit to move in terms of top 4. There's a bit of movement, isn't there? Even in the last 3 weeks. But will your top 4 be the top 4?
For Australian outdoor living. Thanks, Bucks.
See you, mate.